Well, hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Rao here to talk about the annual performance of the Perseid Meteor Shower, the 2020 version, which will be peaking on Tuesday night, August 11th, into the wee hours of the morning of August the 12th. This video is a primer to give you some idea of what meteors or shooting stars are. They're not really stars dropping out of their fixed positions in the sky. We'll get into that in a moment, but also to help you in getting the best views of this particular event, the Perseid Meteor Shower. I want to just tell you right off the bat that meteor shower is a misnomer. You're not going to step outside on Tuesday night, look skyward, and see meteors coming out of the sky as if you were looking at a water sprinkler. That's not the way it's all going to pan out. Typically, when you go outside on a clear, dark night, and if you stand outside and look long enough and hard enough, you might see 3 or 4 meteors during the course of an hour's watch. But on the night of a meteor shower, the amount or the rate is a bit different, higher. And in the case of the Perseid meteor shower, if you're lucky enough to be in a clear, dark area away from light pollution with a wide open view of the sky, no tall obstructions like buildings or trees, you might be able to count as many as 50 or 60 per hour, as many as a meteor per minute. But if you have light pollution, if you have tall trees and buildings in your way, you're not going to see anywhere near as many meteors. But in any case, the number of shooting stars that will be visible on the peak night, which is again Tuesday night, August 11th, will be much higher than what you would normally see if you were to step outside on most any other night. Anyway, we're going to show you a few graphics here to help out and tell you a little bit about meteors. We're going to do a little bit of a sharing of the screen here with a special PowerPoint presentation I've put together for you. And we are going to talk about, again, the Perseid Meteor Shower. So this is 2020, and this is the 2020 version of the Perseids. And as far as what meteors are, again, as I mentioned a few moments ago, they're not actual stars dropping out of their fixed positions in the sky. What they really are tiny little bits and pieces of celestial debris, tiny little bits, maybe no bigger than a sand grain, maybe as large as a pebble, let's say, little tiny particles of nickel, stone, iron, again, in most cases, no larger than a grain of sand. Literally billions of these teeny particles drift in the spaces between the planets, and millions of them strike the Earth's atmosphere every 24 hours. Again, here's a highly magnified view of what a meteoroid would look like, one that has landed on the Earth. Any meteoroid, be it tiny dust grain to maybe the size of a boulder, and maybe if you've been to a museum, you've actually seen some of these big pieces. When they land on the ground, they are meteoric specimens, geologic specimens, which we know as meteorites. So these tiny particles streak through our atmosphere at very high speeds. They hit our atmosphere at anywhere from between 7 and 45 miles per second. Speeds so great that, as everyone is aware in this age of space, friction with the atmosphere must raise them to white heat. They're consumed many miles above the surface of the Earth. The average meteor appears at an altitude of about 70 miles and disappears just a second or two later at an altitude of about 40 or 50 miles. This should give you some idea or some concept of the fact that you needn't be concerned about the fact that when the Perseid meteor shower is in full view on Tuesday night, that you'll have any chance of getting hit by one of these things. Again, they're very tiny, again, sand grain size with the consistency of cigar ash. And again, they're consumed miles above the surface of the Earth, far above our heads. One time we received a phone call at the Hayden Planetarium in New York, and the caller was very concerned about hearing about the impending meteor shower, and we had to allay her fears. No, you don't have to worry about getting hit by one of these things. They're, again, going to be consumed far above your head. Now, where do the Perseids come from? These tiny bits of material, this dross, if you will, that envelops much of the solar system, is caused chiefly by passing comets. Comets are dirty snowballs. They are several miles in diameter, and they contain embedded in them little pieces of meteoric material, which when they come close to the sun are released into space by way of the long, beautiful tail that you see here. This particular meteor shower, the Perseid meteor shower, is caused by a comet that goes around the sun about every 135 years, the comet Swift-Tuttle, discovered by Lewis Swift and Horace Tuttle back in 1862. This is an artist's view here of a number of people looking at this comet when it appeared in 1862 from the Harvard College Observatory. And this particular comet was quite bright, quite spectacular. In fact, it was only a bit brighter than the comet that we just recently had move on by, comet Neowise, which many of you, I hope, got a chance to see during the month of July. This comet put on a great show during August of 1862. And unlike Neowise, which did not have any interaction with the orbit of the Earth, Comet Swift-Tuttle does have an interaction. When it goes around the sun, the material that it sheds, these tiny little bits of, again, dust and grit that spew out and are left behind in its orbit out in the solar system, you can call comets actually cosmic litter bugs. Well, along the orbit of the comet are these little pieces of dust and debris. The Earth just happens in its orbit around the sun to pass across the orbit of this particular comet, Comet Swift-Tuttle. It happens every year in the middle part of August. So at this time of the year, in the middle of August, the Earth in its trip around the sun passes through all of this cosmic, dusty, dirty material left behind by the comet. And as a result, that material pierces our atmosphere at high speeds and creates the effect of shooting or falling stars and puts on a rather nice display for all of us to look at, again, in the middle of the summertime. Now, there is one drawback to all of this. It's one thing to collide with the little bits and pieces left behind by the comet. However, this comet, as I mentioned, has an orbit which pretty much coincides in mid-August with that of the Earth. You may wonder, what would happen if the comet itself were to be at this particular crossing point at the same time that the Earth in its orbit around the sun came whirling around? Is there a possibility of a collision? Yes, believe it or not, there is. And astronomers are very concerned about this. This comet, Comet Swift-Tuttle, may actually be the most dangerous object in space in our solar system relative to here on the Earth. In fact, back in 1992, a very assiduous orbit investigator, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Brian G. Marsden, who passed away, I'm sorry to say, a few years ago, was a good friend of mine. He made a calculation back in 1992 suggesting that this comet possibly could collide with the Earth in 2126. We've since refined the orbit enough to know that that is not going to happen, but it still does not rule out the possibility that sometime down the road, many thousands of years from now, this comet could be a target for the Earth. In fact, it's given us some food for thought after Dr. Marsden made this comment that this comet could conceivably one day collide with the Earth. It made scientists ponder, how might we somehow manage to move a comet or possibly push a comet away from the Earth's orbit if we did indeed see that a comet was on a collision course with our planet. Food for thought, indeed. Well, at least we don't have to worry about in the foreseeable future the comet coming our way. But again, every year in the middle of August, when we cross the comet's orbit, we see this display of meteors, little tiny bits and pieces that have been spewed out by the comet on its rounding of the sun, again, at periods of approximately 135 years. Okay, the comet, we know these as Perseid meteors, but some some Christians know this as the night of the shooting stars. This is also sometimes referred to in some books as the tears of St. Lawrence. St. Lawrence was a saint that was martyred on August the 10th, 258 AD. August the 10th is his feast day, and he was griddled or put to death on a hot grid iron. It would make anybody cry. The thought was, when people hundreds of years ago looked up into the sky on his feast day, August the 10th, and saw these meteors, they said, "Oh, look, behold, these are the flaming tears of St. Lawrence." And in fact, if you are familiar with the movie Lorenzo's Oil, some of you who may remember that film that was made back in 1992 may remember that some of the key characters in that movie, Lorenzo, Michaela, Augusto, spoke of St. Lawrence and spoke of the night of the shooting stars, the night of the falling stars, the night of the tears of St. Lawrence. That was a couple of hundred years ago when the meteors peaked on August the 10th, and that's why we know them as the Tears of St. Lawrence. As I mentioned, they now peak on the night of August 11th into the morning of August 12th because the orbit of the comet Swift-Tuttle has been shifted a bit relative to our orbit because of perturbations by the other planets. Still close enough so that even if you were to go out on the night of August 10th, on the night leading up to the peak, you would still see a goodly number of meteors or shooting stars. Okay, so why do we call them Perseids? We call them Perseids because they come from the constellation of Perseus the hero. Perseus is part of the famous soap opera In the Sky, where the beautiful princess of Ethiopia, Andromeda, this line of stars that you see here, was chained to a rock to await her death by a giant sea monster known as Cetus, the whale. Perseus came along and saved Andromeda because he was holding in one hand, here you see the hand here, he was holding the head of the Gorgon Medusa, who was so ugly that if you looked into her face, you would turn into stone. Well, Perseus, upon seeing the beautiful princess and seeing her about to be devoured by the sea monster, flew in front of the sea monster, held up the head of Medusa. The sea monster gazed into Medusa's eyes, turned immediately to stone, sunk into the ocean. Perseus cut away the chains that Andromeda was attached to, and off they flew and lived happily ever after. That's the legend of Perseus. And this constellation that we see in the sky, low in the northeast at about 11 o'clock on midsummer evenings, this constellation is where the meteors seem to dart from. This is actually an illusion of perspective. The meteors aren't coming from Perseus per se, but they are on parallel paths. But it's an illusion of perspective that gives us the impression that the meteors are darting from one particular spot near Perseus, this radiant point or the radiation point of where the meteors are coming from. So because of that, they became known as the Perseid meteors, again, because the meteors seem to dart from the constellation of Perseus. You may not be able to identify Perseus. You may not be able to identify Andromeda, but just above the radiation or radiant point of the meteors is a zigzag row of 5 bright stars. That's the constellation of Cassiopeia, the queen of Ethiopia, the mother of Andromeda. And if you've ever looked into the nighttime sky and look off toward the northeast, again around 11 p.m. in the middle part of August, you will most definitely see this constellation, Cassiopeia, because it looks like a big W in the sky. And this bright W right below the W is where the meteors seem to stream from in the middle part of August. Now, there's one problem this year with the Perseids, and that is the moon. Last year, the moon was a real problem. Last year, we had a full moon on the night of the peak of the Perseid shower, and that pretty much wrecked the shower. Because you see, when a full moon is out, it lights up the sky. So much so that even if you're out in the country, only the brightest of the stars are visible. And in terms of the meteors, which appear in all varying degrees of brightness, the faintest and even medium bright streaks were obliterated by the bright light of the full moon. Only the very brightest of the Perseids were visible last year. This year, not quite as bad. This year, we're going to have a half or last quarter moon. That last quarter moon is going to rise after midnight, late Tuesday night. So up until then, the sky should be dark enough for you to see a fair number of shooting stars. After the moon comes up, though, some of the fainter streaks will be squelched, so to speak, by the light of this last quarter moon. But better half a moon than a full moon when you're observing or looking for meteors. One of the nice things about the Perseids is that many of the meteors are bright. They can stand up to bright moonlight. Many of the meteor showers that appear during the course of the year, when a bright moon is in the sky, forget about it. Don't even bother looking, because most, if not all, of those meteors are, again, squelched by the light of the moon. At least with the Perseids, there are a number of meteors that are bright enough that can stand up to bright moonlight. And that's what makes the Perseids very popular, the fact that they are quite bright. Also, And this doesn't happen every time, but you could be outside watching for, an hour or two or three, see a number of these short, bright streaks in the sky. And then all of a sudden, a meteor will appear that will flash into view, far brighter than any of the meteors that you've seen previous. So bright, in fact, that it might even be able to cast shadows for a moment or two. So bright that perhaps it might even explode right before your eyes. No sound, of course, because of the high altitude that these streaks appear. You don't hear anything, but silently you may see one explode. And these types of meteors, they explode because, again, these particles are very cold. They've been out in space for hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of years, at temperatures of 200 or 300 below zero, or even more, maybe close to absolute zero, 450 below zero. Then all of a sudden, when they encounter the Earth's atmosphere and streak on through, friction with the atmosphere in a heartbeat raises those particles from 2 and 3 and 400 below zero to over 1,000 degrees. And because of unequal heating of objects that have been in space deathly cold, occasionally, if the object is large enough, maybe the size of a pebble, or maybe the size of a dime, they streak into the atmosphere and explode. And we call these bolides, exploding meteors. Bolide is a French term for exploding meteor. What a sight. If you just see one of these during your night of meteor watching, it'll make the whole night worthwhile. And the Perseids are known to every now and then create an outstandingly bright meteor or shooting star. And if you do see an outstandingly bright meteor or fireball or bolide, sometimes they leave in their path a trail, an incandescent trail, a vapor trail, which may hang in the sky for a few seconds. Sometimes, if it's especially bright and prolific, the trail may last or linger for almost up to a minute. And again, you get a chance to see this from time to time with the Perseid Meteor Shower. And you may want to have a pair of binoculars nearby with you. I'm not saying watch for meteors with the binoculars. That will constrict your view to a very narrow area of the sky, and there's no way that you possibly can hope to, see a meteor through your binoculars. Well, you might, but it's much better if you watch just with your naked eyes. However, if a meteor leaves a trail like this in the sky for a few seconds, grab those binoculars and look for that trail through the binoculars. You'll be able to watch as upper atmospheric winds actually stretch and distort that trail as the trail is fading away. It's a very interesting sight, and again, makes for a rather interesting display with the Perseid Meteor Shower. Now, what's the best way to watch a meteor shower? The best way, in my opinion, is to watch by doing what this young man is doing, lying down in a lawn chair. If you try to watch the Perseid Meteor Shower standing and just looking up, craning your neck and looking up at the sky, after about 20 or 30 minutes, your neck is going to be feeling a bit stiff. Maybe even your shoulders may begin to feel a bit stiff. If you take my advice, the best piece of equipment for watching a meteor shower is a nice long lounge chair. This way you can look up at the sky and not put any pressure on your neck. The gentleman that you see in silhouette here in the lounge chair is probably going to have a much better time of it than this person over here looking at meteors just standing up and looking around without any reclining of the neck or shoulders. That's the best way, I think, to watch meteors. If you don't have a long lounge chair, the next best thing to do is to lay a blanket or a sleeping bag down on the ground and look upward and scan the skies. The best way to watch the Perseids is, they come from Perseus. Perseus is in the northeast, so you might want to concentrate your view overhead and toward the northeast. Look up at the sky, keep your eyes moving around, don't stare for a long period of time at any one place, just keep looking all over. And pretty soon you'll see perhaps a streak of light in the sky, and if you trace that streak back, it probably will take you to the general vicinity of Perseus, or the big W of Cassiopeia. Most, or the lion's share of meteors you're going to see during the next several nights are going to come from Perseus. Now, there are meteors that have nothing to do with the Perseid shower. These are what we call sporadic meteors. They may come from a completely different part of the sky. They may actually come from an area not even near Perseus. But again, you have to expect that. Not all meteors are going to belong to the Perseid meteor stream. But the best way to watch, again, either is by reclining on a lawn chair or lying on your back and looking up from a sleeping bag or a blanket. And bundle up too, because even though we've had a number of warm, balmy nights, when you're laying down close to the ground, after a while, you can actually get chilled. So make sure you have a light sweater or a light jacket with you so you don't get too cool during the overnight. I know that sounds kind of strange, but again, you can get a little uncomfortable because summer nights can be surprisingly cool, especially if you're out in the late night or pre-dawn hours. Here's another way to watch meteors is on a hammock. But don't get too comfortable. One of my mentors in astronomy, Dr. Ken Franklin of the Hayden Planetarium many years ago, in taking a phone call, mentioned to the caller, there are two dangers of watching the Perseid meteors. One is getting drenched with dew, and the other is falling asleep. There are going to be lull periods. There are going to be times when you don't see very many meteors or any meteors at all when you're watching the Perseids. And sometimes they'll seem to come in bunches. You might see in the course of a minute 2 or 3, and then all of a sudden there's a lull of a few minutes before the sky bears fruit once again. They don't come, on a regular 1 per minute rate. Here's the tips now for all of you Perseid watchers. Start watching after 10 p.m. once Perseus begins to get high in the northeastern sky. The very best time to watch will be between 2 and 5 in the morning. Why so early in the morning? Because by 2 to 5 a.m., Perseus, which starts off the night very low in the northeast, by 2 to 5 a.m., it has climbed high into the northeastern sky. And the higher the constellation, the higher the grouping of Perseus in the sky, the more meteors you're going to see. Down low, you'll see fewer meteors. Higher up, you'll see more. So that would be the best time to watch between 2 and 5 in the morning. But you could start watching as early as 10 p.m., again, looking overhead and toward the northeast. Again, lie back on a lounge chair, sleeping bag, or maybe a blanket. Bundle up with maybe a light sweater or a light jacket. Concentrate overhead again and toward the northeast, toward the constellation of Perseus. And you might want to consider showering with a friend or friends, not that kind of shower. Of course, I'm referring to the meteor shower. It's one thing to watch a meteor shower by your lonesome, to watch by yourself. But it's even more fun if you have several people watching. And especially if some of you are looking in one part of the sky, another person might be looking at a different part of the sky. Have your heads, all close together, but watching different sectors of the sky to see if you could see meteors flashing out or scooting out from the meteor radiant in the southwest or northeast or overhead or in different parts of the sky. And it's always fun to watch a meteor shower with friends. When you see a short, fast meteor, you might say, "Oh, did you see that? That's it. Charlie, did you see that? It just happened." But if you really see a big meteor, a bright meteor that flash across the sky, it sounds like almost like you just seen a bright skyrocket or a fireworks display. Whoa, look at that. And that makes, the camaraderie makes for a good meteor shower, a great meteor shower. So, try to shower with a friend if you're going to be watching the meteors. And also bring some food and drink. Don't bring alcohol. If you bring alcohol, that's going to kind of dull the senses after a while. The best thing to do is to bring some food or drink with you. Maybe hot tea, hot coffee, cocoa, maybe a sandwich or so. But again, try to stay away from alcohol, because if you consume too much of that stuff, again, after a while, your senses might slow down a little bit. And you really need to be active. You're watching the sky for these swift streaks of light that appear from time to time and place to place. Well, I'm coming to a close here, and I hope that all of you have enjoyed listening about meteors. I hope you've learned something about shooting stars and also about how to observe the Perseid shower. This primer on meteors and the Perseid shower come to you courtesy of Joe Rao Weather, the Joe Rao Weather channel on YouTube. Many of you who are watching are probably subscribers. This is a channel on YouTube which is devoted to covering meteorological and astronomical subjects of some interest. And as we did last week when we had tropical storm Itaiya coming up along the Atlantic seaboard, we gave you all the latest information, all the latest up-to-date information on that here on this YouTube channel. And we're doing right now you a favor by providing you with information of an astronomical nature for the Perseid shower coming our way on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. So if you're a subscriber, thank you very much for subscribing. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It is free. It will not cost you anything. Just subscribe, and hopefully if YouTube is doing its job, you'll get notifications as to when we are going to be providing you with the latest information, latest updates on, again, astronomy and meteorology. And if not, you could always check my Facebook page, Joe Rao Weather on Facebook, and we'll alert you to when we will provide you with latest information here on this YouTube channel. I hope again that you've learned a little something about the Perseid meteor shower. And if you don't see a whole heck of a lot of meteors on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, again, please, if you're going to try to see these meteors, the best thing to do is to try to get as far away from bright lights as possible. Somebody once called me up to complain about that they didn't see too many meteors with the Perseid shower. And I asked, where did you try to observe? And this young lady said, I was observing from my hometown, Yonkers, New York. I said, well, where in Yonkers were you trying to see the meteors? She said, well, I don't live too far from Nepperham Avenue. I said, well, that's why you didn't see too many meteors. If you're in a big city, an urban area with lots of bright lights and lots of tall buildings or trees, you're not going to see too many meteors. The best way to watch a meteor shower is to get as far away from bright lights as possible. Get far, far out. Try to get into the country or down to the shore if you can, and that will give you the maximum possible view of shooting stars. And even if you don't see too many shooting stars, gaze up at the sky. Look up at this wonderful, beautiful universe that we are a part of. The sky for the ancients was full of many mysteries: fixed stars, wandering stars, shooting stars, hairy stars, new stars, mysteries that we can explain today. But ironically, we still see many mysteries of our own: galaxies, quasars, pulsars, and many new ones that we're just beginning to find using telescopes taken outside our atmosphere in our space probes. So each age finds fascination and mystery in that glorious sky above our head. So I certainly hope all of you get a chance to look and watch for the meteor shower, the Perseid shower, coming up again, reaching its peak on Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning. So we're going to come to an end here on our video here, our primer on the Perseid shower. Again, thank you very, very much for watching, and we'll hope to see you again on our next presentation here on Joe Rao Weather. Thank you very much, and have a very pleasant day.